The Mandalorian. Now, I want to preface this by saying that I'm not one of these Star Wars nerds that says, may the 4th be with you on July 4th or whenever it is. Probably not July 4th, right? Independence Day. It's the 4th of something, the 4th of May or the 4th of September, something like that. And I don't know all the movies, and I'm not that into it, right? But this show is so good that I wish I was. Seriously, like, this show drew me in so much that it makes me want to go back and see like the other, I believe it's 6 movies, like a first set of a trilogy and the second set. So I remember back in the day when, and I just looked this up to make sure I have the right year, in 2005, Star Wars Revenge of the Sith came out. That movie I saw, and I really liked it, thought it was great, and it actually made me want to get into the whole Star Wars series, and I tried going back and watching like the original trilogy, etc. But they're movies from the late 70s, early 80s, the earlier ones. I just, for whatever reason, I couldn't get into them. Maybe because like visually they're like outdated, but it's like a modern or futuristic take, but from back in the day. So I don't know, there's something off for me. But I completely get, especially from hearing firsthand accounts of, you know, folks that grew up during that time and when the movies came out back in the late 70s, early 80s, how it was like paradigm shifting and mind blowing within context, right? And what I appreciated most actually from the movie that I saw in '05 is how, and I might get this wrong, so you heavy Star Wars fans out there, take it easy on me, how the movies are released somewhat out of sequence. And there was always a missing piece that was skipped over. And that missing piece is this movie from 2005, Revenge of the Sith, which reveals who Darth Vader is, which is like the ultimate bad guy, and how he became to be Darth Vader, etc. And it was Anakin Skywalker, which was a Jedi and the father of Luke Skywalker. I thought that was dope. Like that, the cleverness of that, of having the foresight of skipping a piece and kind of like leaving them wanting more, and having the creativity chops to go back and fill in that void perfectly. I just thought was awesome. And shout out obviously to George Lucas, the creator of the Star Wars universe, and all the other folks involved with creating something that's recognizably so epic, whether you're personally into them or not. Now, recently there's been more movies, Star Wars movies in 2015, 2017, 2019, none of which I've seen yet. But I'm telling you, I got so into this Mandalorian series that it makes me want to. Over the years, as I understand it, there have been, you know, other like Star Wars spin-off like cartoons and shows and content within the Star Wars orbit. Pun unintended. And this Mandalorian series is one of them. It takes a deep dive look at, and this is my rudimentary understanding of it, of the lineage of one character from the second Star Wars movie, The Empire Strikes Back in 1980, which I believe was Boba Fett, and he was a Mandalorian. And this is the story of another Mandalorian many years later, whose race of people have in large part died off, but he's like this badass bounty hunter, lone wolf type of guy, and the story's written in, it's very much like an old Western in that sense of like the righteous lone wolf character. And I want to take a step back just to appreciate that the show was created and written by Jon Favreau, which I've come to like over the years from different movies that I've seen him act in, movies that he's directed and produced, shows that I've seen. And over time, he's definitely become one of those, like when people ask, what's your dream scenario, like dinner to have, you know, any famous people that are alive that you can like sit and have dinner with and like pick their brains. He's definitely one of them. He's like so prolific and creative in like different areas, and that I really appreciate that. And he's from Queens. Shout out Queens, New York, where I'm recording this from as we speak. But But yeah, just to take, like, he's been acting wise, he's been in shows like Friends, and he was in the movie Rudy, and Avengers, Iron Man, Spider-Man, etc. The movie Chef with John Leguizamo. But I want to take a step back to take an even deeper dive into that, because a lot of these things he's either produced or directed as well, which is even more impressive. So from a writing perspective, he wrote the movie Swingers, and I'm just rattling off a couple things from his IMDb here. Couples Retreat, which is a comedy. Chef, which I just mentioned. Oh, he has this dope series on Netflix called Chef that he co-hosts with Chef Roy Choi, which is great. They go, for example, to like different restaurants and eateries like Wolfgang's, and learn how to make a steak the way Wolfgang makes a steak, and he walks you through the whole process from A to Z. Franklin's Barbecue, to learn how to smoke brisket. Like, it's a dope show. And what I like the most about it is that him and Roy Choi have like this rapport and this great chemistry. And then in every episode they do that. You know, they go to like a famous place or whatever, and they also then go back to, I believe, Favreau's home, and they always make something, and they give you the ingredients of everything they make, and they make it together, and then they just like shoot the shit while they're cooking. And it's very freeform, podcast-like, which is probably why I gravitate towards it most. And it's a really dope show. It's called The Chef Show, or Chef, on Netflix. You guys should check that out as well. And those are some of the things that he's written. Then here's just a few things that he's directed. He directed Elf, which is a classic Christmas movie starring Will Ferrell, which, by the way, I saw like this, which I believe also on Netflix, this like how it got made background story on the movie Elf. And he not only directed it, but he was like the glue that came in and made that movie happen and made it what it is, which again is an absolute classic. And what I appreciate most here is coming up, because it's like, it shows like the arc of creativity that he has. He can go from a classic Christmas movie to a comedy to action movies like Iron Man 2, both of which he directed, The Jungle Book, The Lion King, the 2019 like reboot that was like, you know, like animated with realistic looking like animals or whatever, which I didn't really care for, but it's still dope, right? That's like a cool thing to have as a notch on the old creativity belt. And by the way, Iron Man 1 and Iron Man 2, which I believe like just completely revamped the whole like Marvel series and gave birth to, you know, in large part due to Iron Man, Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr., but obviously with Jon Favreau at the helm as the director, had a lot of influence in what that franchise became, in my opinion. The Avengers movies, etc. And he was also an executive producer on The Avengers Endgame, The Avengers Infinity War, The Jungle Book, Iron Man 3, The Avengers, Chef, The Chef Show, and it goes on and on and on. And then he creates this series, wrote and created the series, The Mandalorian. And it's like Disney Plus's flagship show. It's like, I believe, their first original like series or whatever, or at least the first one that was a hit, but I think it was the very first one. And again, I'm not into Star Wars stuff, but the character looked dope. Like, he has like a really cool look to him. There was like a little hype behind it, and I was like, fuck it, let me watch the first episode. And I did so with my wife, and we were both like super into it. And she's someone else that she's never even seen like any of the Star Wars movies. And I say that, and I keep mentioning that, not to shit on any of the previous Star Wars movies, but because I think it's that much more impressive that it didn't come to it with the weight or expectations or just fandom of the Star Wars franchise behind us. We're just like, well, let's just watch this show, give it a shot. And its ability to not only captivate you and bring you in, but make you a fan, I think is that much more impressive because we didn't come with that fandom baggage. And it's a show that's already won like 7 Primetime Emmy Awards and a bunch of other awards. But I want to tell you guys a bit about the cast and crew here. So the writers on it, which I always want to shout out when I speak about movies and shows and stuff like that. Like I said, it was written and created by Jon Favreau. He's written on all 18 episodes. George Lucas, the creator of the Star Wars franchise, has written on all 18 episodes. And then you have 3 other writers that have written on about 2 episodes apiece, 1 episode for one of them. And the writers are Rick Famuyiwa, Dave Filoni, which is also one of the directors I'm going to mention in a bit, and Christopher L. Yost. Shout out to those writers for creating a hell of a series. Now, the directors, which I thought was really interesting and something that Jon Favreau purposely did, was he worked with a team of 6 directors. So you have himself, who directed an episode, but those 6 directors directed 2 to 3 episodes apiece. And then there were like 1 or 2 like guest directors, one of which, by the way, was Carl Weathers, which is an actor on the show, which those of you who may not know him by name is the guy that played Apollo Creed in the Rocky series. And if you don't know who that is, then press stop and stop listening to this podcast right now. So I want to shout out these directors, which are Rick Famuyiwa, which is also wrote one of the episodes that I just mentioned, Dave Filoni, Bryce Dallas Howard, which, by the way, is the daughter of the iconic Ron Howard, Deborah Cho, Taika Waititi, Peyton Reed, Robert Rodriguez, and Carl Weathers, and of course, Jon Favreau. And what's dope about this like group of directors that he put together is that stood out to me immediately was the diversity of them. So you have a couple women, 1 white, 1 Asian. You have a couple dudes, 1 black, 1 Australian, white Australian, and another white guy. And by white guy, I'm just referring as a white guy to like a North American white guy. And to me, it's just super interesting to see such a diverse looking group of people that all came around this common cause and common interest and were part of creating such a beautiful, well done project. It's kind of like a microcosm of how society should function, right? The actors are super dope. Like I mentioned, Carl Weathers is in it. The guy that plays the Mandalorian is Pedro Pascal, which is the guy that played Javier Peña, the cop from the Narco series, or not the cop, the DEA agent. Gina Carano, the UFC fighter or MMA fighter. Well, yeah, it was UFC. She's in it. She has a dope role. Nick Nolte plays the voice of a character which, by the way, has the character's name is, where is it? Kuil, which is something else that I know Star Wars nerds probably gush over when they see it, that I don't fully appreciate, because again, I haven't watched the movies like that, but they, as an homage to the movies, they sprinkle in like these secondary and tertiary characters from the movies that didn't really get much play. They were just like background characters, but they sprinkle them in throughout this series in more prominent roles. And the Kuil character is one of those type of characters, which Nick Nolte plays the voice. A woman actually, like a smaller, it's like not a dwarf, but a smaller looking like being, and like a very petite small woman plays the actual character, the movement of the character, but she has a like very elaborate mask on, and the mask has 2 other people controlling it remotely, and one person controls the mouth moving, and another person controls the eyebrows and the ears moving, something like that. And just the orchestration between those 3 or 4 people to pull off this one character, I find so like dope, because they all have to be in sync, like just right, just to pull off the flow and the movement and the speaking of this one character. I thought that was so cool. And then it's a similar type of setup with Baby Yoda, which I'm sure you guys have probably seen like memes of, or seen them on t-shirts or something like that. It's like this really cute looking version of Baby Yoda. Yoda is like that little green creature from the Star Wars movies that has the really big ears. In the 2nd season, spoiler alert, I'm going to say it now if you haven't seen it yet, fast forward a bit. But in the 2nd season, you find out that it's not actually Baby Yoda, it's Baby Grogu, which is a descendant years away of Yoda's. Like he's the same, like type of creature, same species. And anyway, that character is, it's a little puppet, and there's one person controlling the way it walks and moves. And there's 3 people controlling it at any given time. One person controls his mouth and his eyebrows. Another person controls his eyes and his ears. And that's how they make the magic of Baby Yoda actually happen. And I thought that was pretty cool. Now, the dopest thing, and again, this was driven and pushed forth by Jon Favreau, and it's not maybe his original idea, as he explained in this like post-show, like roundtable show that they have about the creation of the Mandalorian series, which I also highly recommend if you're into like behind the scenes like type of stuff, which I really am, to see like how the sausage gets made. He breaks down that, you know, different people were working on different aspects of this thing, but in this show, like, he had enough people around him that were willing to help bring the concept or idea to fruition, and they pulled it off. And what they did was develop a brand new shooting technology. So a brand new way on how to shoot movies and TV shows, etc. And I liken it to how the Wachowski brothers, at the time, I think now sisters, I'm not sure, but at the time, the Wachowski brothers, in writing and directing The Matrix, the iconic Matrix, created a new way of shooting fight scenes and action scenes that revolutionized the way we've ever seen fight and action scenes since then, with that like 360 view of like cameras of how they, you know, people like go to fight and jump, and they like sort of pause and suspend themselves in air in like gravity, and you have like a 360 view of them and stuff like that. Like, they invented that. They created that during the filming of that movie. So I liken this, what Jon Favreau and team developed, this new shooting technology, to that. And what they did was combine motion capture imaging, or a motion capture camera, with a video game engine and green screen. So what that did essentially, and I'm, you know, definitely no camera or videographer or expert or anything like that, so I might be fucking up the terminology a bit, but the gist of it, what I got from it, the explanation that I heard was that allowed the crew to capture footage from within a virtual environment. And they use this video game engine which renders, meaning like from, you know, video games, that renders images in real time. So, and they showed like footage of like the studio and like stuff like that they worked in. And picture like a planetarium looking place where you have a set, but instead of it being like all green screen all around, you have LED like screens that actually change. And if you want mountains, you'll see mountains. If you want sunrise or sunset, you'll see that. If you want to see the stars and the plane, you know, the ships going, you know, light speed, like, you'll see that. So from a shooting perspective, you have like endless applications that I can't even begin to pretend to understand. But just like the scope that you have to work within is that much more or less confined. And what's interesting from the actor's perspective, and I believe it was Giancarlo Esposito who is in this and he was in Breaking Bad. He played Gus Fring, the Boyos Hermanos guy. He said that from an actor's perspective, it's dope because you don't have to pretend as much. And I think Carl Weathers like touched on this as well. Like, you get the instant feedback of what you're supposed to be seeing. So traditionally, if you're in a studio with a green screen and you're supposed to, you know, be like looking at a sunset, for example, like, you have to, as an actor, pretend that there's a sunset there. But now with this footage, with this new technology that they've created, like, you actually see the sunset there as an actor, so you can play off of that. Then in post-production, this is how efficient it is, like, across the board, from an acting perspective, a directing perspective, you know, cinematography perspective, and even in post, you don't have to add in as much scenery and stuff like that you would traditionally with like a green screen, how they like in, you know, post-production, like impose that onto the green screen and, you know, fill in what the actor was imagining, etc., because it's already actually there in the actual shot. And I think that's so dope, and we're going to see like that technology continue to be used and evolve. And I believe it's going to be something that's going to allow productions with maybe a smaller budget be able to create that much higher quality content because of how efficient this technology proved to be. Anyway, that's my little spiel on The Mandalorian. It's dope. I highly recommend it. There are 2 seasons out right now. The second season is 2 or 3 episodes shorter than the first season. So it's only like 6 or 7 episodes. The first season is like 8 or 9 or 10, which I didn't like just from a consistency standpoint. I didn't like that aspect of it, but I'm guessing because of like COVID and stuff like that, they may have had to have cut it short. But either way, that's just from a selfish perspective, right? Like I wanted to see more episodes. It's a dope series. I highly recommend it. It is available on Disney Plus, and you guys should check it out.